Hi everyone, and welcome back to the third and last video in our series. Last video we talked about the differences of Renaissance and classical violins, but especially the transformation of the bow. So now let's get on with the evolution of the instrument itself. So there are three big things, at least from a performer's perspective, that set the Baroque instrument apart from the modern one. Number one is the overall setup. The neck of the modern instrument has been reworked to support the larger tension created with modern strings. Steel strings have a lot harsher quality, more of an edge, more overall sound. Gut strings, on the other hand, especially the earliest strings, were much more sensitive to weather and atmospheric conditions. They would go out of tune very easily and they would wear out equally easily. On the other hand, they actually resonate longer on Baroque setup instruments simply because the box of the instrument is under less tension. Steel and synthetic strings became the norm by the mid-20th century, but many big violinists still swore by gut strings even then. Number two is the length of the fingerboard. The length of a modern violin's fingerboard is around 270 millimeters. If you compare that to what Stradivari was originally designing for his instruments, the fingerboards were between 190 and 213 millimeters long, which is a really big difference. The basics of this are pretty simple. The fingerboard got longer and heavier as the repertoire got more and more wild. So if you look at Mozart and Bach and even Corelli and Tartini, there is plenty of extremely virtuosic music going on there. That being said, is that music happening in the highest registers? No, definitely not. I haven't actually gone back to check, but I'm pretty sure Bach never really goes beyond fifth position while still managing to be easily some of the most difficult music in the repertoire. It's a different sort of difficulty as compared to something like Stravinsky or Enescu, or pulling it back to the original violin badass, Paganini. There is a lot of pushback against updating instruments to the modern form, and I get that. Every instrument I show in our channel has been updated to a modern setup. That requires some serious work regarding the tension, fingerboard, bridge, bass bar, pegs, almost everything, just to sustain the way we push our instruments now. Is it good for the instruments? Strictly speaking, no, not really, but at the same time, it's not exactly good for the instrument to be in use either because it's subject to more wear and tear. I remember having this conversation with an insurance agent when I was much younger, trying to explain that you really need to use an instrument and not lock it away, and no, I wasn't going to sign anything that had provisions like that. It is, however, good food for thought. I've also found swirling around the message boards of the classical violin world. Are we ruining the violin by having a longer fingerboard? They ask, who actually plays up there anyway? And are you actually pressing down hard enough on the string that high up to merit the presence of a fingerboard? So the answer is yes, we play up there, and yes, you do need a fingerboard up there if you're going to play this sort of repertoire. Of course, you run the risk of pressing too hard, but a trained violinist has to find that balance and learn to feel the best way to produce a rounded sound, even all the way up in 10th position. And number three, and this is probably my favorite one, the chin rest. So, like I mentioned in an earlier video, the chin rest is comparable to the cello's end pin. It is a huge boon. The chin rest was invented in the 1820s by composer and violinist Louis Spohr. If you don't recognize his name, he's one of these guys that's starting to earn back his recognition after being extremely popular during his day. So the chin rest is this bit that sits just on top of the violin and makes it possible to hold the entire instrument just with your chin, as opposed to having to hold it up with your arm while simultaneously playing it. And it's also responsible for the violin mark. Its invention was in response to and a bit parallel to the lengthening of the fingerboard. If you're still struggling to hold up the instrument, at least even a little bit with your arm, you're not focusing all your attention and energy on hitting those crazy high notes. All of these inventions only serve to make the music more virtuosic as they allowed the performer to push the limits of what was possible. So you can see how the chin rest parallels the end pin in this way. Now, we're going to wrap this up with what's commonly known as the big step from viol into violin. In 1550, the Medici family commissions Andrea Amati to create a new instrument for them, the violin. Specifically, Catherine de' Medici, who was also the Queen of France, commissioned 38 instruments from Amati to create an orchestra for her court. Amati's shop was in the northern Italian town of Cremona, henceforward known as the birthplace of the violin. And the earliest surviving violin, made in 1560, is currently in residence at the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford. It's very likely there were violins made before Amati's, but Amati was the first one to kind of get the blueprint down, refining the instrument and its dimensions into something incredibly more resonant and able to stand on its own as a solo instrument. So thanks for watching, and I hope this shed a little light on the instrument for you. So I've been doing this in bits and pieces across many other videos, but I've been wanting to kind of get it down into one cohesive history in one series for a while. So I hope it's helpful, and if you liked it, please remember to subscribe, like, and comment below. Until next time, cheers!